something to say.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Project Shadow. My name's Charlie. You might know me better as sci-fi fantasy writer C.E. Dorset, especially if you're reading my new book, Crucify My Love, available over at Amazon in Kindle and print versions, or as a podcast, anywhere you get your podcasts. Just search for Mask of the Gods, and you should find it. If you don't, let me know, because it should be everywhere, and if it's not, I want to fix that. So today we're going to do something that I don't like doing much anymore, and that's talking about stuff that's not out yet. Because, stuff changes, things evolve, not being able to actually see the content, Now, I do talk about trailers sometimes when they come out, and the impetus for me doing this is, of course, the new trailer for HBO's Watchmen series. It's not really a trailer, it's a teaser, and it's out, and yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. But not necessarily the show they're doing, but just some basic questions about why do something like this. So before we get started, if you haven't already, please rate this podcast in whatever app you're listening to me on. It'd be really great. Just give it a like, give it a 5-star. Just say, hey, that would be wonderful. That tells the algorithm to share me with more people. And also, don't forget to share this podcast with your friends and others who might be interested. Okay, so, oh my goodness. I don't know where to start. I've been saying that a lot lately, but I really mean that this time because when HBO originally announced that they were doing a Watchmen series, my internal clock just ticked off, just turned off. Because I love the comic. I think the comic is fascinating. I think it is a period of its time. It is a remarkable feat of storytelling. The movie should never have been made, and made some creative choices with the story that I think altered it to the point where it's so different that it has to be seen as its own thing rather than anything too much related to the comic, even though some sequences are copied very clearly from it. But I've already talked about the movie a long time ago. You can find me doing that either here or in the podcast archive over at projectshadow.com. But, okay. So, this show. My biggest problem with it is it's DC yet again showing that they have no idea what they have in their properties. And, well, I've made it no secret that I did not enjoy most of the Batman movies that came out with Christian Bale. I think Batman Begins was a terrible movie. I think Dark Knight Rises is a terrible movie. I think 2/3 of The Dark Knight was really, really good, and then it just overstayed its welcome. But my biggest problem with those movies is I don't understand why they were Batman movies. So the studio used a license that it really didn't need to use because they had done such a significant rewrite to the character and person of both Batman and Bruce Wayne to make them unrecognizable, with the basic exception of their iconography, to the characters that have been out there in the world before. I don't understand why you would do something like that to your IP. It doesn't make sense to me. It's kind of like, unless you're doing a full-on reboot and willing to stick with it, that the J.J. Abrams movies did this to Star Trek, and I think the legacy of those changes have been one of the most contentious things about Star Trek Discovery. And Marvel did this really well when they kind of rebooted and retooled Thor and Iron Man and Captain America for the movies. So I'm not saying that it can't be done well. I'm just saying usually when you hear that they're going to be straying from the source material, it makes you wonder why they're not just calling it something new. And this is HBO in its desperation with Game of Thrones going away, wanting to have a prestige series that they can try to keep subscribers with. People know The Watchmen. The Watchmen has a reputation for being dark and gritty and killing characters off. It has a very similar reputation to Game of Thrones. Probably would appeal to a similar demographic. It, on HBO's part, sounds like just like a slam dunk. Like, this is what we should do to try to keep that Game of Thrones audience until we get the Game of Thrones prequels up and running. Because without Game of Thrones, what do we really have? So, yeah, I can see the appeal on their part. But as far as DC Comics goes, other than maybe making a quick buck off of HBO, who has to pay the licensing rights for this, I'm assuming, though more than likely this is part of one of those incestuous deals. I think HBO is actually owned by Time Warner. I'm not sure. Anywho, doesn't really matter. The biggest problem that they're going to have with this series, especially for people like me, is you're creating a series based on The Watchmen. You're calling it Watchmen, and only one character from the original story is going to appear in it, and that's Ozymandias. Now, you did something really smart in casting Jeremy Irons to play him, but Ozymandias is kind of the least interesting character in The Watchmen, and he's the villain. So I'm presuming he's still going to be the villain in this movie, in the series, in this limited series. I guess, maybe. I really don't know. Now, okay, so Jeremy Irons is playing Ozymandias. There's apparently a group of vigilantes that are using Rorschach masks for reasons, whatever those might end up being. You've given me a really good cast. I'm excited about the cast. The cast looks really good. I'm thrilled about that. It's going to be set in Tulsa, Oklahoma, not New York. So that's going to be different. Though, if we're setting these events after the original story, which I'm presuming still happened, it would be really interesting to see what the aftermath in New York is after the fake invasion. But we'll, I guess, have to find out about that. I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel more like this is going to be a reboot rather than another story in the setting. That may or may not be true. We'll have to wait and see till we get more teasers and the show finally debuts. But you're trying to get me excited by using the name Watchmen. And then you tell me that it's not going to have any of the characters that I know from the comic or characters that are known from the movies. Because, let's be honest, most people that they're targeting with the series have never read the comic. Some might not even know it's based on a comic at all. They might just know it as that Zack Snyder movie that came out with the naked blue dude in it. So not having any of those characters, with the exception of the Rorschach vigilantes, which basically means that his legacy is just to spread psychopathy to the masses, I'm guessing, or being a rallying cry for sociopaths to get together and do terrible things in his name. So that'll be fun. The only way I'd really be okay with that is because, he's killed in the events of the original story. If they're secretly under the control of Ozymandias or somebody else, and he's just trying to, warp his memory or distort his memory somehow. There are too many unknowns for a show like this for me to get thoroughly excited about it, with the exception of saying the cast looks really good, and I'm excited that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross are going to be doing the soundtrack. You don't get me with David Lindelof because I don't like the shows that he does. So, the real question here is, what is the purpose of a show like this? Because it's kind of like telling me we're going to be doing a Justice League TV series, but it's not going to have Martian Manhunter or Hawkgirl or Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman or Green Lantern, and it's going to be exclusively about Red Tornado and Elastic Man, and we're going to create a bunch of other characters that you've never heard of, that have never been superheroes before, and put them in this show, so you're excited, right? It's such a strange premise to be trying to do, to build an entire series around getting us excited for a show based on a book that many people really like, and then to ignore as much of that book as possible. Because the brilliance of The Watchmen is that it is a purely comic book experience. I don't know how you could ever adapt it in its entirety in a way that keeps the story that they were telling in that book and doesn't make it feel compressed or that parts are missing. This is a big part of why the Zack Snyder movie is controversial, because he changes one of the huge elements of the original story, and that's that Ozymandias fakes an alien invasion, and does so in a way to try to shake people out of their complacency, and kills millions of people in the process. That storyline is very different from the one that we get in the movie, and the movie also changes the temperament of several of the characters and really misunderstands most of the others, so that while visually they may appear similar to the characters that we had in the original comic, they really aren't the same characters at all. And this is kind of a common problem with Zack Snyder's work. You can see this with Man of Steel and, all the way up to the Justice League movie. But there's something just completely bizarre and off with trying to do a TV series based on a popular property that doesn't utilize elements from that property. It's kind of like when we found out that they were going to be doing a new Charmed series, not having the Charmed ones in it. If they decided to do that, everyone would have gone, well, why are you calling it Charmed? Now, more than likely, what they're doing is they're trying to expand the story out and tackle the themes of the original comic, but in our more modern world, where we have a much more developed surveillance state, we have the internet now. I'm assuming all of that's going to come into play since they cast Jeremy Irons to play Ozymandias, and he's a great actor, but quite old for the part. So to me, that, means that they're time shifting the story to close to the present, if not the present. And okay, that would be interesting if they take into effect all of the things that they need to take into effect there, right? What were the outcomes of Nixon's third term? What were the outcomes of, what happened after the false alien invasion? Was it ever figured out to be false? What do they mean we thought they went away, but they just went dormant? So, apparently, after the events of the first Watchmen, all of the superheroes in the world just went into hiding? And so, we're going to get a dark and gritty version of The Incredibles, where they finally come out of hiding and start doing things again for reasons that will hopefully be explained and not secretly hidden in the background to maybe one day be revealed, so that we keep going back to the series time after time after time, just hoping we get some basic information. They're going to have to do more than this. They're going to have to give us some character profiles. They're going to have to give us so much more than they have, as in, who are the Rorschach people? Why do all of the police have the yellow masks on? What's the deal with that? Who are these new superheroes that they're introducing, and why should we care about them? Because just saying, oh look, here's an actor that you really like, that I get the draw that celebrity has, and I'm really curious to see some of these people in a superhero context. But having said that, at the same time, you have to give me something about the character that interests me, something about the story that interests me, is because unfortunately, what I feel like we're going to get in this series is that it's basically going to be a retelling of the original story, but in a modern setting, because that's what they're doing. They're going to pay some lip service to the idea that the original story happened, and I guess the results that Ozymandias wanted didn't come to pass, so he's going to do some other dastardly plot to try to wake up the world and get accomplished his maniacal agenda. I don't know. But that's what it really feels like. Because you can't just try to Force Awakens me with this. The superheroes are back. Did you feel it? No, I didn't. Because I don't know who any of these people are. And just showing me, oh look, that dude's got a silver face, and look, there's a whole bunch of people dressed up like Rorschach. But their masks don't change, so they're not really Rorschach. Okay, well that's a thing that you did. Oh look, there's Ozymandias. He's still alive for reasons. If they're going to do what it looks like they're doing, which is telling a completely original series, because they keep using that phrase, it's going to be a completely original series, then they should have had the bravery to make it a completely original series. If you weren't going to be touching on the original story at all, then what's the point of calling it The Watchmen? Because fandom, I think, has spoken quite openly and loudly that nobody cared about before Watchmen. Nobody cared about Doomsday Clock. This is not a franchise that people really want to see extended. It's a limited series that accomplished its task, and it's over. Maybe they found the secret sauce that they can bring it back with, but I don't feel it. I'm not feeling it. You gave us nothing to latch onto except for some iconographic images that you think are going to get us excited because you're doing a thing. And it frankly just didn't work for me. It fell flat. So, I don't know. It has the potential. I'm definitely going to watch at least the first episode to see what I think, because Gene Smart's in it, and if you want to trick me into watching pretty much anything, just put Gene Smart in it. I'll watch it, because I'm one of those people. But Yeah. I don't know what they're thinking. And I would love to know what you think they're thinking, because this just feels like a cynical use of a trademark to try to trick people into continuing their HBO subscription until the Game of Thrones prequel can start. And doesn't feel like anything more than that, because they're very clear and upfront. This is a limited series. We're not going to be getting, it's not going to be continuous. It's not going to be ongoing. They supposedly have a beginning, middle, and end. Maybe only one season of it. I don't know. But yeah. HBO, what are you doing? How lost are you without Game of Thrones? I have weird ideas. Talk to me. Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode and you haven't already, please rate it in whatever app you're listening to me on. I have started a thread over on Twitter to discuss this episode, and I would love to have a conversation about this, because especially if you're excited for the new Watchmen series, I want to be. I really do. But I'm not. So please sell it to me. Make me fall in love with this idea. I would love you to try. Yeah. Or go to anchor.fm, download the app, follow Project Shadow, and leave me a voice message, because I would love to get excited. Please keep it clean so I can use it on the show. If you have a buck you can throw my way, in the show notes you'll see a link to community support. If you click that, you can join the project at the $1, $5, or $10 levels. That money does really help me out a lot. Helps me do everything that I do, and thank you to everybody who already does that. I am working on sprucing up my Patreon perks. I'm CE Dorset over there if you'd prefer, but we'll talk about that more when we get there. Alrighty. You can find links to everything I do at projectshadow.com. And I really want to talk about this one. So, yeah. Until next time, don't forget, have the fun. Bye.